a little bloody tab thing off my jacket. Drives me crazy. G'day everybody, welcome back. So, Delboy got a new toy. He went and bought himself a bench lathe. And you know, he's copping a lot of flack from the usual suspects, myself included. But the reality is that, you know, I mean, good on him for getting a lathe, that's great. Is it one that I would have bought? No. Is it better than the one I own now? Yes, because I don't own one now. I have been on the hunt for one for a while, just for work. And I've been looking in the second-hand market because, I mean, look, the first rule of thumb with buying machinery like lathes, you always buy the heaviest and the biggest thing that you can afford, even if it's second hand, because you want something nice and heavy and sturdy. If I was going to go and buy a small bench lathe, it'd be something like a Myford ML7 or something like that. I certainly wouldn't buy what he bought, but you know, at least he's got one and he's having a go. The only issue, of course, is typical Delboy. He's sitting there trying to tell everybody that he's being open-minded and, oh, I'm just a newbie and I want to learn, and I appreciate all your constructive comments. But he's still hiding all the all of the real comments. He's not right. He's not learning at all. He's just oh, maybe he is, I don't know. But he's sitting there making smug comments about the machining community, as though he is now part of the machining community. Anyway, not to be outdone, AvE got a new toy. What a ripper! He's got himself a 5-axis machine centre, CNC machine centre. Holy dooly! And I was watching. I think he's got a couple of videos up now on that machine centre, and I was watching the one with where he's making the first chips, and at the end of it, it had like a blooper reel from a machine shop. And it's sort of the whole Delboy getting a lathe and the blooper thing sort of had me thinking, because I've seen some bloody, and I've done some stupid things when I was learning as an apprentice, because my initial indenture was machinist first class. I was in a machine shop, but I ended up completing a fitting and turning machine apprenticeship, because I really preferred to be out on spanners, so I sort of pushed my way out of the machine shop and into the manufacturing plant, where we did a lot of assembly. But when I did my time, CNC was bloody brand new, and we had a couple of CNC machines. We had a lathe, and we had a CNC drill, and we didn't have a CNC milling machine, but we did have one of them old ones with the pegs where you can sort of plot. But the CNC lathe and the drill were really old school, with a perforated ribbon, and you only had to have a decimal point in the wrong place, and my God, couldn't you make a mess with those things? But one of the things about machinery like lathes and mills and shapers and drills and any metalworking machinery, and in fact woodworking machinery, is that they do the job they're designed to do very, very well, but if it goes wrong, it can bite you very hard. People die or are maimed or seriously injured using metalworking machinery. And if you're lucky enough to get away without killing or maiming yourself, you can still do a lot of damage to the machines themselves or your tooling, and that can get super expensive. So it sort of, like I said, prompted me to remember a few of the incidents when I was a young bloke. I think one of the first things that I cocked up, and ultimately it was my responsibility, even though cut to the chase, I essentially we had a couple of large radial arm drills, and I had to drill a hole through. I was drilling some holes in a mounting plate for something, and one of the holes was quite large, 2.5 inch drill or something like that. And the way the system used to work was everyone had numbered tags. I think mine was J18. There you go. 15 years old. God, how many years ago was that? And we used to take your tag up to the store, hand the storeman your tag, and he'd hand you the tool, and then he'd hang the tag on the hook where the tool was. At the end of the day, he'd go through, find out who had what, and if you hadn't returned, he'd come and kick your ass. And in the store, where you had some tool and cutter grinders and drill sharpening, what have you not. Now, first year apprentices used to spend quite a bit of time, nearly half a year, I think, in the store, just learning what was what and learning how to use the sharpening equipment. And sometimes we'd sharpen those big drills by hand, on and off hand grinder. We did have a machine for sharpening them, but you need to learn how to sharpen by hand, so that's what used to happen. Long story short, I hadn't checked the drill. I just assumed it was okay, and I put it in the drill. I brought the drill down to the plate. I engaged the automatic feed, and then wandered away to talk to my mate. Next thing I could hear, the drill stalling up. And I turned around. By the time I turned around, the thing had stalled, and I heard a big crack. And it was the fact was that the cutting edge had been sharpened too low, so it was rubbing, not cutting, and it was just welding itself to the workpiece as the automatic feed kept trying to drive the drill down, but of course it wasn't removing material. And it then split the drill. As it stalled the machine up, it split the drill right up the middle through the flutes. Now that wouldn't have been a cheap drill bit, but that's sort of not where it ended. I thought, oh dear, oh well, you know, happen. These things happen. But then I couldn't get the bloody thing apart, so because everything was completely under load from being driven, I found it hard that we couldn't get the feed disengaged. Eventually what we had to do was take the fan cover off the motor and wind the machine backwards by hand to take the strain off it. Then we could release it, but then it had put that much pressure on it that the bloody the Morse taper was rock solid in the quill. I could not get the bloody thing out. We had to pull the top of the drill apart and come down through the top with a piece of round bar and a big sledgehammer and drive it out of the Morse taper. Oh my god, it took hours to get that thing apart. So that was a bit of a lesson. One, first check your tool, and then two, don't walk away from the job, because if it does go wrong, you need to be there to rescue it pretty quick. There's another one where one of the other guys, yeah, dad jumped off the machine and walked away. It was a milling machine, and he was cutting a slot in something. And this particular milling machine had a bit of wear in the detents on the various feed directional levers, and if you didn't watch it, the up and down directional lever would vibrate and engage the up axis. And that's exactly what happened. He started a slot in something, and he engaged the feed and jumped down off the duct board and walked over to talk to somebody. And so, similar sort of thing, he started to hear the motor stall up, and he realised what had happened. And what it had done was it had cut a slot into the bed of the milling machine, into the table. So it had come off the end of or gone right through the workpiece, and was cutting into the bloody cast iron work milling table, and that had to be disassembled and sent away to be repaired and reground, and that wasn't good. Another one I did, and it's all lack of attention. So you take them for granted and you turn your back and things go wrong. We had a very, very large bins and berry lathe. This thing was huge. The chuck would have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet in diameter, I think. And it had a seat on the cross slide. So you sat on the saddle and rode along with the machine. Had a hydraulic tailstock, and it was a very large machine. Anyway, I was machining an ore conveyor roller. So we used to get these things up from the fabrication shop with basically just a fabricated steel drum, so made out a large section of pipe with an end plate welded in each side and a shaft in the middle. So they'd arrive on a pallet. We used to mark out the centre of the shaft and drill the centre drill into the shaft while it was still sitting on the pallet, and then we'd lift it up with an overhead crane and a sling and place it in the lathe in the 4-jaw chuck with the centre at the other end. So I put the job in the lathe, and it was in the chuck, and I was truing it up with a scribe block. So you just that was close enough for what we were doing, because all we'd do is we'd do a rough machine of the surface, and then it had to go out and get rubber lined. But one cut on these ore rollers would take about 30 minutes or more to perform, so there's a bit of work involved, not a lot of setup. So the way that we used to do it was you'd have the thing held on the overhead crane, you'd lower it down into the chuck and put the live centre in the end, and while you were clocking it up, so you're sitting there spinning the chuck, and then you'd move it, and then you'd spin the chuck and move it until you had it trued up. And it wasn't until it was trued up that you'd remove the crane and the sling. So you'd have it suspended in the lathe, and you'd just lower the sling or lower the crane so the sling was hanging loose underneath it in the event that it fell. So I'm doing that, and the smoko bell went. I went off of that smoko, as you do, because back in the day we used to have an alarm to tell you it was time for smoko, and then we'd have an alarm 3 minutes before you were supposed to start work again, where you had to be standing at your machine, and then the end of smoko alarm would go and you'd start work. So I get there and I'm thinking, oh, where was I? And I started to spin the chuck around. I thought, oh yeah, that looks pretty close, happy with that. So I packed up the sling, pulled the crane out of the way, jumped up on the machine, and started rotating, brought the tool up to the machine, started my first cut, engaged the automatic feed, opened up my favourite book at the time, which was probably bloody Playboy magazine, and started machining. And what was happening was I hadn't tightened the chuck properly, so the workpiece was walking its way into the chuck as it was being machined. And we're talking about a roller that was 3 or 4 feet in diameter and about 5 or 6 feet long, not including shaft. And it worked its way out of the tailstock and then climbed the tool post. Fuck, I'll tell you, I heard it go on kabang. By the time I looked up, it had already wiped out the tool post and was climbing up the chuck. I banged the emergency stop and dove off the machine, but not before it did a lot of damage. And those sorts of things happen, and it's always through inattentiveness or a lack of respect or a programming error in the case of CNC. But where the real stories come is when you're at college, because we used to do 7-week block release, and the TAFE teacher at the time, he used to walk around, and all day you'd be hearing these loud bangs because people would be leaving the chuck key sitting in the chuck, and he used to walk around, pull it out of the chuck and throw it at the swarf tray as hard as he could to make a noise and make an example of anyone who'd been so foolish as to leave a chuck key in the chuck. I mean, I saw and heard a few good ones. There was someone who'd forgotten to turn on the magnetic vise on a surface grinder and shot the workpiece into the bloody end of the on the surface grinders. They have a vertical guard at the end of the table on both ends, which is basically there to stop the coolant that's flying and sparks. It arrested this job. It blew the wheel to pieces. That was a good one that happened while I was at college and witnessed it. And another one that was an absolute ripper, but seriously not good. One of the jobs we had to do was a bottle jack, and I think it had a 5/8 or 3/4, somewhere around that, national fine thread in this bottle jack. And this bloody idiot kid decided he was going to try and clean the thread. He put a rag on his finger and stuck it in the end of this bottle jack while the lathe was running, and he friggin' screwed a 3/4 UNF thread on his finger. Oh, so jeez, I can still no. I'll never forget that one. And I've had clothing nearly get caught in lead screws and dumb shit like that. Run the tool, or the tool post into the chuck. But there's lots of things that can happen. You just need to maintain respect. Or you'll damage your workpiece and you'll damage your machinery, or heaven forbid you can damage yourself. And it's unforgiving. That stuff does not move. It's designed to cut metal, so it will cut you. It will smash your fingers, it will maim you, break bones, take out eyes and teeth, fill you full of sutures. You must always show respect and learn the basics. You know, you just got to learn the basics. Yeah, when I was an apprentice, we used to get some boring jobs. We used to have these turret lathes. You'd just be doing repetition stuff, or you'd get a 44-gallon drum filled with clevis pins that you had to machine, and they were just face and chamfer, drill and tap for a grease hole. And they were all X4150 at the time, ground bar, hard as hobs of hell, and you'd have to drill a 3mm hole up the guts of them and tap them out for a 1/8, also tap them out for a 1/8 grease BSP for a grease nipple. The amount of drills and taps used to snap off. Just thousands of these things. Face and chamfer, drill and tap. Face and chamfer, drill and tap. But you know, that's where you start to learn, and you learn about different cutting speeds and feeds for different materials and different tooling. How to grind high-speed steel tooling, and that's what Delboy should be doing, especially our little lathe. It'd be perfect for flaming high-speed steel. You don't have to run massive RPMs. And you learn about cutting angles and how to produce the right type of tool for reducing chatter on a workpiece, or different profiles. That's all the stuff that he should be doing. Anyway, it's his business, not mine. Is that a good enough rant? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and I'll catch you next time on Dji's Motorcycle Obsessions. Bye for now.